Let's do this thing, Caitlyn. It's
Connor Moore.
2018. We're rolling into this thing,
That's
and
scary.
I really feel like 2017 was the year we got to know each other.
It was.
It was. Did we meet in the first time in the jungle?
We met in 2016 in the jungle of Peru, having a little dance with the medicine.
A little dance.
Mother and the grandfather.
And the grandfather. Old San Pedro, or Huachumas, as we call it.
It was the very first time I met you. We were boarding a bus to go to Houston to fly down to South America, and I got to meet you and Liv, I think, for the first time.
Yeah.
Our girlfriend, and a few new people that are now big parts of my life. So.
Well, it's funny because this happens to me a lot, and I really love this, is when you go into an experience with people you don't really know. And there was a handful of people on that trip that I didn't really know, but that Aubrey had known in his life, and you go straight into complete chaos in a way. Like not even like real world chaos, just this astral
chaos
chaos together. And it's, I'm sitting here within knowing you for a few days talking about seeing trees communicate with each other and shit.
Yeah. We're all going through our deepest shit and just being super raw, which is probably the coolest and most intense way to meet anybody.
It is. I mean, I don't think I ever told you this, but we were doing the mapacho ceremony, which is a black sacred Peruvian tobacco, and this is not even a psychedelic substance by any means, but we had it's very powerful as far as grounding and creating an environment for a meditative space, and it's really great. And you were the first person who ever said, "I see you," and I understood what that meant. And I don't think I ever told you that. We were walking on a path, and you said that to me, and I was like,
I remember that distinctly.
It was so powerful for me because I've used that since then as a really for seeing myself and seeing other people and the power of being seen and seeing. But it's not the kind of seeing with your eyes, and that's something that's really powerful. So that moment that's when I knew Caitlyn.
Yeah, that's interesting because I remember that specifically, and I remember that feeling I had for you. I had tremendous love and recognition of you, and I mean, I'm sure the environment helped, and our walls were down, and we were there to be connected and be present. And that was actually the first time I've done a lot of medicine work over my years spanning since like 2012, but most of it's been on my own, or with Aubrey, who introduced me to a lot of this stuff. And that was my first time with a group. So it was one of my first times I was able to feel that too. It was like really looking at somebody because sometimes when you're with strangers, you're in your own internal experience, and you're really focused on yourself and looking to see what you can get out of your own experience. And it takes a while to really connect with a stranger. But when you come in there as a group and as a community and a tribe, as we all came to be, you can like see yourself in others more. You start opening up to that connectedness, and it was such a gift. It was my first time getting to go through it without like the horror of being alone in the jungle and like what's going to happen to me. So that was really cool, and I think that we've grown a lot since then as a group and as a two friends here side by side. So it's been a cool ride.
Yeah, it has been. And it's funny when you think about it that way. It's a completely different experience doing it with a group of people that you know or kind of know, or that you've been referred to by someone that you really care about, because you do get the opportunity to see other people that you know have a vested interest in you as well. And my first time doing ayahuasca was with people. I knew some people, had some acquaintances there, but no one deeply. And being in that experience and going through some of the stuff with someone I was a partner at the time and things like that, and people that I just had tremendous love for outside of the jungle, and taking that into the jungle was absolutely wild. But coming from that, and then that ability to see other people and see yourselves, and something I've really started to explore since that experience and starting to come into my own as this thing that I am or whatever, is the dark side of that too. Like you start to see your shadow, and that is extremely challenging for a lot of people. And a lot of people don't even get to that point where they get to truly objectively observe themselves in their darkness and their light, or as my friend Mark England calls it, the white shadow. You don't have light. You have a white shadow and a dark shadow. And
Interesting. I hadn't heard that yet.
Yeah. So Mark's a great guy, but he brought that to me, and I thought that was just so profound because we tend to glorify one. I think I actually shared an article with you the other day called "Fuck Love and Light" or something like that. Because we all love and light this, love and light that, and it's like if you ignore your shadow and try to ignore your shadow, that motherfucker will come out of nowhere and punch you right in the throat until you recognize it. And it will come in the sneakiest ways and infect your life, but you've got to be able to see it. And something you and I had been talking about a little bit lately is recognizing the patterns in your life and the fucking struggle to break them.
Well, that is absolutely resonant with me. I would say, I'm a person who's been having a years-long battle with my shadow that didn't need to be a battle. And coming to terms with that it's going to always be an ongoing relationship and not something that you can destroy about yourself has been really healing for me and really important, because my first ceremony, speaking of ceremonies, was with Iboga in Costa Rica in 2012, and I had never done.
And Iboga's a pretty, I don't want to say aggressive, but it's definitely a strong medicine.
It's not a starter one. You don't want to just.
It can be if you try hard enough.
I mean, apparently for some it is. It was for me. It was recommended to me. It's used for treatment of. It's very effective for heroin addiction. Used to treat addiction, and there are ibogaine treatment centers in various parts of the world. So it's a 24-hour plus trip typically, and very, very intense, very challenging for most people if they even remember it. But I went into that ceremony with this idea that I had to change, that I had a demon that I had to slay. I had this writing and these visions of I had some addictive tendencies, just these ongoing patterns and habits that I couldn't seem to overcome. And I think, it's the second of the year today. Or is it right? It's the second?
Yeah, it's the second.
It's the beginning of the year.
Yeah. We're early up in 2018 right now.
Way early. 2018 was just birthed upon us. And and it's that time of year where you're like, where you look at all that stuff about yourself, unfortunately, often most of us do. And that's something that, it was February of 2012, and I was feeling really defeated. I was feeling like, God, I just can't seem to overcome myself. And maybe this will do it. Like, this is going to be the moment where I just murder this thing, and I wrangle it, and I come back a new person, and new year, new me.
Yeah, right.
Everybody wants to have that kind of radical change. And it did give me incredible insight, but it wasn't overnight. Even 24 hours of nonstop journeying, so to speak, took years to integrate. And I think that that's something to go back to our time in the jungle. Sometimes you have all this build up and anticipation of this pivotal life moment where you're like, this is going to be my time to change, and I'm going to wake up the next day and I'm going to be a new person. But you don't know, it's sort of this fantasy, and you maybe underestimate the new relationship you're just going to have with your shadow. Now I'm going to see my shadow in this different way. It's not just going to go away. It's not going to be obliterated. So, so that's been something that I've only recently really come to terms with. And it was I wanted to get rid of it because, you feel like if you could just do that, then so many of your ongoing problems will be alleviated and you can overcome yourself. And it's more about having a relationship with yourself or cultivating one.
Yeah, maybe my one of my teachers that I work with often, her name is Rhonda Smith, and she's a shadow integration coach. That's her title. So she.
You go see her.
Yeah, she's fantastic. Yeah, she's actually going to be on the show soon, and I'm
Awesome.
extremely excited to have her on. But she talks about the power within the shadow, because a lot of these things I feel like there becomes a toxic expression. I talk a lot about expression, and I think that's a major part of life, is being able to authentically express yourself. But these toxic expressions of the shadow that we try to pretend are light, it's like no, man, let it be what it is. Let it come from where it is and have a relationship with it. And once you have a relationship with it and you can create a fuck ton of compassion around it, because you have to. You don't have a choice. You have to have a large barrier to entry of compassion before you can acknowledge your shadow and work with it.
Wow,
Then
that's true.
you can kiss it on the forehead and ride it like a dragon. You know, you can Khaleesi that shit.
I love
You can
that.
go straight Game of Thrones
That's what I
on your
want to do
shadow.
with my shadow. Hell
Right?
yes.
and you can breathe fire on all your bullshit. So it's like it
Love it.
has so much power in there, but if you don't learn how to utilize it and play with it and shape it and give it shape, it will just explode everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that we have, this kind of new age millennial culture of, we can be whatever we want all the time, anytime. We can have all the things. And it's like, nah, motherfucker, you got to choose what you sacrifice in life. You get the most beautiful thing about life is that you get to choose what you sacrifice and what you don't. You know, and if free will exists, that's a debate. But it seems to me that we get a chance to say, no, this is more important to me than that. And I choose to sacrifice that for this.
Sure.
And that's liberating, and that's freedom. But freedom comes from discipline, and freedom comes from understanding yourself and investigating yourself and wading through your own bullshit.
Oh my God.
You know?
That is so true. That's something I've, in terms of choices, I think recently has been even stalking myself a little bit deeper. There's ways to recognize, oh, I want to make this change, and choice is so powerful. If I can make a sacrifice, or if I can choose this one thing, then it's gonna have a positive impact on my life. Well, I've realized, like in terms of, say I want to, get something accomplished, I'm going to stop drinking. I just did this at the end of November. I was like, 40 days till the end of the year, and I'm going to commit myself, and I'm going to do all of these things, really change my life and end strong, because I felt like I wanted 2017 to be more, something more, quantifiable. Like I could look back at it and say, I did this, this, and this. I ticked all the boxes, and I accomplished at least some of these goals that I've had for like 4 years or something. And then all of a sudden it's November, and here I am again. And then some of these things hadn't really fully taken shape. So I thought, I'll stop drinking, and then I can get so much accomplished. Well, I did for a while. I felt really good. And I think that there's a lot of value in it. And discipline's an incredible tool. Devotion is an incredible, really, really effective and beautiful way to apply yourself to some of these things. But ultimately, like, I think I still saw it as like a way to earn back the thing I was giving up, which isn't really choosing it. It's not like if I choose not to drink so I can eventually earn my right to drink again, then it's not really choosing not to drink.
It's like working out for your cheat meal.
Yeah, exactly. And then you have that one cheat meal, and then all you want to do is have another cheat meal, so you still want it, and you're just doing it as a way to get the thing back, which is subconsciously and energetically saying, I still want that thing, and I still choose that thing.
Well, it's like confirmation bias. It's like self-validating.
Yeah.
You're sitting in a place and you're like, I did the thing, so now I can have the thing, and then you end up deeper than you were before.
Exactly.
You're like, well, now I can just go full bore.
I went 3 weeks. I'm going. It's a Christmas party. I'm going nuts, and that's kind of what I did.
And but then you recognize it, and that's where the compassion comes into play, because you're going to slip. And I think about the best kind of imagery I can think about when you come to the terms of trying to limit or break a pattern is like a tether. It's like this tether that's, little kids that are on a leash at the mall or something. I don't go to malls very often anymore.
I do see that. I was like,
and
wow.
And the kid's like, it's like this, it's anchored to this thing, and it's like runs and then gets snagged and pulled back, and runs and you get snagged by the tether and pulled back again. And you just keep doing that. And it's like, until finally you turn around and you create a little space, and then, okay, well, let me figure out how to get this fucking thing off of me. I can't just keep tugging at it. It's just going to keep pulling me back in. It's like a magnet. And when you can go and like try to actually problem solve yourself, unravel yourself, chase yourself down to the very root of what's causing that pattern, love on it, and then okay, now it's time to let me take the lessons here. Let me take the lessons here, put them in my toolbox, and move on. Yeah. Because you don't ever want to just leave it behind. I think that's one of the most classic forms of spiritual bypassing, is saying, don't get hung up on the past. Don't be hung up on the past. Don't be hung up on the past. It's like, dude, if your past keeps coming back, if some cycle keeps coming back and jumping into your life, that means you got to see it. You have to address it, because it's not going to just go away because you ignore it. It's like the junk drawer in your house. Like, you just keep putting shit in there. It doesn't mean it disappears just because you can't see it. It just isn't surface level, which is actually more dangerous. And that's where the plants come into play, because a lot of times fucking ayahuasca will just go and open that junk drawer and be like, clean this out now.
That's right. That's so true.
Like the junk drawer in your consciousness. And it's funny, but what patterns do you find in yourself that are really, I'm asking you to be very vulnerable here, putting you on the spot, but what patterns in your life? Yeah. I mean, that's the barrier to entry to being on the show, is you got to put it out there.
And then I nervously pick up my notepad and start
fidgeting
with it. Man, I think there are lots of surface patterns that I could call out. I'm late to things a lot. I desire things that I can't seem to fully finish. I have a lot of started projects that I don't complete. And I have just kind of an overindulgent in the moment kind of personality that a lot of people love. So I get tons of social reinforcement for being fun and being the last person to go home, and and those are things that seem like easy fixes from the surface. Like, I could say, I should stop going out for a while, or I should not drink, or I should do all these things to set up my time management better, which I obviously have no suggestions there. Or just like, there are different practices that I could be applying, but I think what you've just alluded to is sort of like digging deeper and saying, okay, well, what is it about me that loves that social reinforcement to the point where I would sacrifice maybe like my long-term goals? All of these things are bleeding out from some source of inadequacy that I have deep in my heart, and maybe filling that with some substantial self-love or things of that nature is going to be more effective in the trickle down thing. And for many years, it's been more of a Band-Aid approach. Yeah. Like, what can I do to fix this symptom rather than fix, the disease, or which is, something probably that stems from childhood, or something that's really, really deep rooted that I can't even see. And just like when something triggers me, or when I have a relapse of some kind of a habit. So it's been things of like, tardiness, unfinished projects, sort of cyclical. You find yourself like every year kind of on this very, very gradually ascending spiral where you're like, wow, I've grown, but I'm still like in the same spot, kind of. But I've grown, but I'm still here. Well, I recognize this.
It's funny because your growth creates awareness of the things, and then you get more frustrated with yourself because now you're more self-aware of your shit. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because I think the thing there is there is a little bit of a hole, or everybody has a hole, right? Yeah. Everybody have a lot of holes, but like inside of ourselves that we're trying to fill with things outside of us. And it's one of the best lessons you can ever learn, is that something outside of you is never going to fill the hole. You got to find it within yourself and fill it with yourself. One practice that I implemented towards the end of the year as a suggestion from Rhonda Smith. I think she's gonna get brought up
wizard.
A lot today. Yeah, she's a wizard. Is taking that energy. So say I have a desire for something outside of myself. For me personally, and I've tracked this down, is the desire to feel needed. And that's but based, you think about some abandonment patterns early in life, but I have this intense desire to feel needed, because I've as I talked about on Aubrey's podcast, like felt small a lot of my life. I'm physically big and very gregarious. So it's deceiving, because inside I felt so tiny. And so for me to feel needed was a big piece of that. So I would feel those desires come up, and I started seeing the patterns before that desire would arise. So this desire to feel needed or validated or wanted would come up. And for me, in knowing where that works for me, is that I would get it from girls, right? Mm-hmm. I would go to, and it's not like I wouldn't go to the strip club. I think a lot of people would do that too, but I would like go to Whole Foods and like be cute in the in the produce aisle, right? And like try to get someone to like give me some kind of like energetic attention, because that made me feel validated and feel needed. And I started to see that pattern in myself, and I said, okay, well, creating that desire within myself takes energy. right? And to go do that takes energy. What if whenever I felt that come up, I acknowledged it and accepted it, and then took all that energy and put it back into myself, like in my mind, maybe in a meditative state or just with my intention said, I'm going to put that energy that I would go seek outside of myself and put it in that hole that exists that I love, that is a part of me. And what would that feel like? Would that actually give me more long-term fulfillment than going and finding, just happening to walk by the cute girl in the, buy the rice cakes at Whole Foods?
That's I thank you for bringing that up and being so vulnerable, because as usual, someone else's vulnerability always kind of like spurs the freedom to be vulnerable ourselves. And for me, I think something I recognized in 2017 that was pivotal was this festering need to be chosen. I had been engaged once before. And I think this all kind of relates as well to my ongoing social compulsion. My issues, my personal and most raw issue, when it comes to overindulging or being hypersocial at the cost of my personal prosperity, relates back to wanting to be liked. I think a deep self-love and confidence sort of hole, to use the term that you mentioned. And then this has been sort of echoed in what I perceive to be failed romantic experiences. I'm 34, and for a woman that grew up in the age that I did, now I think things are shifting massively. So the next generation may not have this sort of like subconscious pressure. Maybe not. It'll probably take generations to fully shift. But there's a sense of failure and self-rejection that starts to happen if you don't conform to that sort of society, like, now you should have children. And also there's a biological impulse, like you want to have a child because your body wants to.
You're in your early 30s, right?
34.
Okay.
Yeah. So almost mid.
Well, mid 30s becomes that doesn't become a real driver.
Yeah. It's probably like just marionette, like
I'm about to be 31, and it's like, even in me, I'm like, okay, when I play with, our good friend Kyle Kingsbury's kid, and, you see I definitely share a lot of videos of that kiddo, but, I start to get that urge, like, kids aren't just cute. I want one now.
Yeah, I want one. I want to love something.
Yeah, and
I'm loving everything around me is sort of this like shadow expression of that, and it's sort of just stuffing a void. So I got to a point around the time I went to Burning Man where I had another challenging interaction, and I kind of recognized, like, oh, my trigger here is that I don't feel like I'm chosen. And this is all, this was like a blueprint that was laid in like a big traumatic separation for me that reinforced not a lifelong, but maybe probably very long
to the point
time
now,
issue of feeling like I want to be liked and I want to be chosen. And now it's being exacerbated by my age and my surroundings and the cultural pressure to have a family and to be married and to be in a relationship and wanting to understand, like, I logically know that I have value, but how do I translate that? I find myself seeking all these tools and doing these medicine ceremonies and reading books and like following social media inspirational posts, and I know it, but translating that to my heart. And to go back to what you said about giving it to yourself, one of my big, powerful mantras from the past month, where I did make some changes, kind of inspired by the end of the year, was choose myself. So when I felt a sense of, or choose yourself to myself, choose yourself, you can do your best and you can love somebody the best that you can, and you can give somebody what you want to receive. That doesn't mean they're going to accept it, and it doesn't mean that they're going to give it back to you. So the best way to take care of yourself is not by giving what you want to other people. It's by turning that inward and giving it to yourself. And so I started doing daily practices where I'd wake up feeling sad, or like this little like impulse of not quite being happy with where I'm at. And that's been sort of like more frequent as I've gotten older. And just saying, like, what can I do right now in this moment, right now before I go to work? It's more important than anything. Right now, I'm going to do breath work. Right now, I'm going to sit with myself on my mat. I do Kundalini morning sadness sometimes if I get up early enough, even if it's 5 minutes, or I'm going to do a face ice bath because it jolts my system and it makes me feel like $1 million, or I'm just going to write to myself and do my morning pages like you've been doing as well. And all of those things, I mean, they made the most profound shift. And I noticed a difference. That's one of the gifts of falling off again, is you get to look at things and be like, wow, that really worked. And now that I'm not doing it, I feel sad again, or like I'm off, So choosing myself and like investing that energy that I spent frantically trying to give to other people, it's been a game changer.
Do you feel like, and this is a very targeted question, but do you feel
Bring
like,
it.
do you feel like in your life and in these patterns that you create an environment that's very similar to the one that failed for you? To try and right that wrong from your past?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Wow, that is so true. And I think, particularly in my most recent romantic investment of my energy,
Romantic investment is such a great way to put that.
It's a subconscious one, but it was one. I think that's kind of what I've been trying to do for years. You have one traumatic event and it gets filed away sometimes into a compartment that you can't even see or access, but it rules your life.
Yeah.
And you're just like trying to redeem yourself constantly to yourself.
Yeah.
To show yourself like
I can fucking do it. God damn
I
it.
am lovable. Yeah. This is going to be the person that it works with. This is going to be the thing that makes sense of all of my pain. I've had so much pain, and now I have to have this thing work, because then it would make everything worth it. Because we all hear that. I've had so many girlfriends, I've had girlfriends and guy friends really, but girls open up to me more often. But just to express like their devastation when something doesn't work out, and it's sort of this natural reaction to go, someday this will all make sense. Yeah. And it's
also spiritual
there's a bigger picture at work here, which there is, and it probably will, or it might not, but we can't, but there's such an inclination, because we want to feel better, to lean on something else again, something external coming along and going, this is why that happened. You're valid.
Yeah.
It's okay. And again, it's coming. I think that the focus keeps turning outward. Mm-hmm. You keep waiting for circumstance to show you why you suffered.
You want to right that wrong that you did to yourself.
Yeah.
I want to prove that I wasn't the broken one.
Exactly. Or you beat yourself up for years and say, oh, that job failed, that marriage or commitment failed, because I did so many things wrong, and I recognize them now, and now I've grown, and now I'm going to measure myself by repeating the cycle, reinventing the same situation, so I can prove to myself that I changed, and I can measure myself. And then, well, guess what? You got a ton of other factors going on, like someone else's free will.
That other person wasn't involved in your whole
exactly.
your whole storyline,
your whole drama. That
your narrative is your narrative.
Word, that is the truth. Gosh, and man, it's hard to accept that, because then you have to keep taking responsibility for it, sole responsibility. It's like it's beautiful. We are an interactive animal. We need each other. We need community, and that's why we see each other. Like when I saw you in the jungle, we see with our hearts. When we're The Little Prince, that's one of the best little books ever.
Yeah.
There's a line from it that says, only with the heart can one see rightly. And we also get kind of blindly led by our hearts, so to speak. There's kind of two hearts, I think. There's the heart that's like emotional, and then there's the heart that's divine. Yeah. And we can kind of chase those aching pains that we feel in our chest and our stomach and try to like fix them. But really ultimately it's just going to have to come down to taking full responsibility and not leaning too much on the social interaction in the community to redeem what only you can feed yourself. So
and it's funny because you use the word fix, right? And we always say like, I'm going to fix this, I'm going to fix that. It's like, to acknowledge that something needs fixing is a passive way of acknowledging that you're broken.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
that's so wild too, right? Like I think there was this moment, and I brought this up. I don't know if I brought it up on the podcast before, but I'm going to do it again.
Do it.
Or I was in kind of a discussion about some things that had gone down that were very painful for me, and I just wanted to blame because I knew I didn't deserve it. I was like, I didn't deserve the situation that I'd been put in, and it didn't seem right to me, and it was very. I can't even really put words to it, which is uncommon for me. But I remember the other person saying, "Why can't you just let this go?" And the words that came out of my mouth absolutely changed everything. And I said, "I resent myself for letting it happen because I've felt that way before. Like I've felt put aside, and I've felt not chosen, and I've felt betrayed. And I did that when I was young, and I spent the next 20 years." Developing someone who wouldn't accept that. And I just got myself in a scenario. I chose a scenario for myself and chose by allowing that scenario to occur in a way that I was unfamiliar with and I didn't really know how to handle, but whenever I said the words, I resent myself for letting it happen, I realized that it was me. Like I let it happen. I chose it. It wasn't someone else. Someone else is living their story, and maybe there's a lesson there for that person too. But whenever that was like when I was like, oh shit, that's what ownership is.
Yes.
That's ownership. And that's the challenging piece. It's like grasping the fact that you did it. You're not broken, because that's when the compassion piece comes into play. But you did allow it or create it in some way. And you can either take a passive role at that or an active role in that. And a lot of people, I'll say from my observation, like just maintain the passive role because then they can play the victim. Yeah. And it's so
easier.
Intense.
You can negate responsibility, and then you don't have to work as hard, and then you don't have to feel uncomfortable with yourself.
You don't have to work as hard, but you don't. But then you end up. And
that's no fun.
Yeah, what these
sitting around being victimized constantly, that's terrible.
But then you end up in a place where you don't work as hard, but you don't get anywhere.
Exactly.
And that's something else that challenges me to see, especially people that I love that I don't think. And a lot of times you don't do this. Like our society hasn't been structured in a way where we're taught to look inward. We're marketed to from an extremely early age. I mean, from the time that you're eating fucking breakfast cereal, you are getting marketed to.
Staring at the back of a box.
Yeah,
there was
exactly.
No kid cell phones back then.
But now there are. But yeah, I mean, and that's so we're created. We create an environment where we look outward all the time, and we don't get a chance to look in. And if we do look in, we only want to see, like I said, love and light, which is great. And to lead with love and light is to look outward and understand that that's the lens you want to see the world through. But it has to be from a place of what Jack Kornfield would call the wise heart, and that's understanding your situation, understanding your circumstances, and developing that deep rooted compassion. Because if you just, I've said so many times, like the happiness isn't the goal. No. Happiness can't be your goal. Happiness is a byproduct of better questions that you can ask yourself. Like, does this make me happy? Happy when? Happy now? Happy in 10 years?
Happy by what? By what standards?
Yeah. What does happiness even mean? Or can you ask yourself, does this help me fulfill my journey in life? Does this fuel me? Is this in alignment with the person that I would love to be? And when you can ask yourself that question, be like, well, maybe it'll make me happy now. Yeah. But it'll derail me from the bigger picture, right? And then you have to own the bigger picture as well then, which is even more daunting. But when you can ask yourself better questions like that, it becomes extremely powerful.
Definitely.
And extremely challenging.
I think to relate to that a bit, to go back to like one of my defining pivotal traumas, which was, a breakup that I went through that was really hard for me. I felt this sense of loss and this sense of failure that really influenced so many of my perception and so many of my experiences thereafter. But then when I really look back at it, like that's it, from the pitiful outlook of like, oh, I'm still single and I'm lonely and I'd like to have a family. Well, I also had like a radical adventure after that where I was able to extract so much compassion for the millions of people that are also going through challenging things, who have had romantic loss, who don't have a family, had a family, and lost it. I mean, there are so many ways that we can suffer. And there are so many ways that we can celebrate because of how we've suffered. We have a jewel that we've mined out of, extreme challenge, and that's something that we can share with other people. I after that, I moved to Vegas, and I had a lot of like darkness, and when I really look back
in Vegas,
I know this is a shocker.
Like Vegas is the home of love and light.
I went straight for the love and light. I was like, I'm suffering. I need more love and light in my life. I'm going to move to Sin City,
where nothing is real.
Yeah, exactly. But man, and then I kind of mourned and then I had this real period of unconsciousness and like sort of rejection of that like love and light, and like I was so mad at myself, to go back to what you said, that the truth was I felt like an enormous victim because I was so mad at myself for losing what I loved and for my life not going the way that I wanted it to go. And I felt it was my responsibility on a deeper level. I punished myself for that. And then, but then when I really look back on it from where I'm sitting, it's not like I had some aha moment where I met the Prince Charming and then everything made sense and thank goodness this happened because then I met him. No.
And the fairy tale didn't.
That never happened.
Happily ever after.
That never happened. But what did happen is I'm sitting here in my seat right now talking to you, and I can look back at my life and think, damn, that was fucking wild. What a fun ride. What a cool experience to see the darkness of some people, to have this unexpected adventure into this really challenging environment. And now I have more of a broader scope with which I can relate to people, and more poetry for my heart. I can be a more compassionate artist. I can feel deeper, and I can have tasted such a great, huge spectrum of the human experience. Would I trade that to go back to be 29 and like have a baby and be really well taken care of financially and cozy and like deciding how I'm going to decorate my one of the rooms in my house? Like, I'm not saying there wouldn't have been other challenges in it, and there's not tons of beauty in that too. There's so many, but there's so much beauty even in the darkness. And that's something that I was able to really experience firsthand. And it's part of my medicine and my toolkit. And like the things that I have to offer the world were shaped by that. And I wouldn't change anything.
Yeah, and that's one thing too. I think that's absolutely beautiful. And you look at that, and it's when you can mine, like the way you use mining. You can mine the dark.
Probably got that from somewhere.
Hey, man.
But who knows?
Whatever. It's out there now. But no, when you can mine into yourself and find the shadow and embrace the shadow, find the beauty in yourself, find the things about yourself that are beautiful that eyes can't see. Bring that to the world. You can love deeper. You can love more fully. And the thing about it is too, you talk about having children and decorating your house and doing that and all these things. If you're doing that for the wrong reasons too, then you're going to be just as lost in a different way. And what's different about that, to show compassion for those people that are listening to the show, if any soccer moms are checking this out, is that has its own host of challenges as well.
Absolutely.
And then everybody who comes from a different place of victimhood will look at them and be like, well, they have everything. They have it all figured out. And then they don't have a chance to be vulnerable and be like, no, this is a challenge for me too. Right. I'm in a place now where I didn't even know myself, and now I'm this deep. And so we end up in this place of needing to look at everyone through a lens of, we all have challenges.
We do.
And everybody just wants to be seen and heard and understood for the good and the bad, because there's a white shadow and a dark shadow to everything, even being well taken care of and having the perfect storybook life. Because how many times have we seen that fall apart and be so surprised?
No. Oh yeah. I mean, I've seen plenty of my friends at this point are well into the kind of life that I dreamed of for myself for so long. And there's no shortage of pain.
No.
I mean, there's no shortage of challenge. There's always, letdowns and heartbreak and darkness everywhere. And it's really about looking at that with compassion, and not getting sucked into that grass is greener tendency that we like really just dominates the human experience. Like we always think someone else has it better than us.
And there's an evolutionary reason for that makes sense, but it doesn't really serve us now. And that's where the whole idea that we're kind of a confused species, because we're like
transcending the evolutionary puppeteers of our existence.
It's funny, but everybody has it. And the pattern, that's why I love this show so much, is because the patterns of fulfillment, regardless of your external circumstances, are very similar. And it doesn't necessarily involve psychedelics or anything like that.
True.
But just like the patterns of success, whether you want to be an author or a CEO, require the same style of sacrifices and commitment. It just is what it is, and your starting place is your starting place, and that's where your journey begins. But no one is immune to the shadow. No one's immune to the darkness, and it can easily be avoided by everyone. But looking at someone who's different than you as if somehow their life is better, it's one of the things that Marcus Aurelius says in Meditations, and I'm going to not say it as well as he did because I'm not him, but it's look at your life and all the things that you do have when you're struggling, and all the things that and how bad. Let me say that again. Look at your life and all the things that you have when times get tough, and think about how much you would long for those things if you didn't have them. Now, do you need to always be that way? No, you need to be ambitious and say, I want to drive forward. I want to create this thing. Like, I want this podcast to get in all kinds of people's ears, and I want to support people, and I love giving people a voice, and these are great things. And if I didn't have that, and that wasn't that long ago, it was 3 years ago when I wanted to start a podcast, and this thing's been live for 6 months at this time. Like, I longed for it. I wanted it so bad, and I know what that feeling feels like. So whenever things do get challenging, I'm like, but you get to do this.
Yeah.
And you chose to sacrifice. Don't fucking pretend like you didn't choose it, motherfucker. You did. You chose it. Now sit in it and be with it. Feel your feelings. It doesn't make it necessarily prettier, but it makes it more free.
Yeah. And recognizing your hand in something. And even the pace. I think one of the exercises I like to do that I got from my practice with Kundalini a little bit, and we kind of like had some discussion about reincarnation and stuff, because one thing I always hated the idea of reincarnation because I'm attached to my identity, and I want to feel like I'm in control of this life, and and that I'm not just like a heartbeat in some long existence, which is ridiculous because how great would that would that be? But then when I really thought about like, whoa, if my divine self designed this life to be the perfect heartbeat in an eternal existence, and to be at its own pace, and you take ownership of that, and how slow things happen to you, and all the gifts that come with maybe, we get, I think, a bit caught up in like, oh, another year's passed and I still haven't done this, and
I'm not where I should be.
I'm not where I should be. The ultimate like self-flagellation move is just looking at like, I did this. I chose it in this life, and maybe I chose it beyond this life, and it's perfect. And then it like fills my heart up with like warmth when I think about that it's so weird because you do want to take ownership of the conscious choices that you make, but when things are out of alignment feeling, or you're really feeling pain or confusion, and like you said, that kind of sense of like, this is unjust. I didn't deserve that. I've made all the right choices, and this is still going this way. Well, maybe your higher self chose for it to go slower. And I've been by your side. We've both been by each other's side over the past year through some confusing moments where you're like, this is uncomfortable. Yeah. I don't know why this is happening like this. I've done my best, and this isn't happening fast enough, and I'm not seeing the kind of result that I want, or things didn't work out the way that I want, and I'm hurting. Going back to that place of like, I did choose it, and maybe I chose it like even beyond something that I'll ever be able to understand from where I'm sitting right now or anytime soon. It's just it's so healing. Mm-hmm.
It is, and that's how you heal yourself. You just give the wound some attention.
Yeah.
Like, just acknowledge, like, hey, man, it hurt. JP Sears. I'm going to just name drop all day on this podcast. JP Sears, just feel the freaking feelings. That's what he says. And it's funny too, because this is something that, and this is going to seem extremely superficial, so I apologize to all the listeners out there that are going to think that we're assholes, but Rhonda Smith, Cosmic Smith Radio. We've brought her up a few times. She's the host of Cosmic Smith Radio. Go give her some love. If you're into kind of the stuff that we're saying, that comes from her divine consciousness. Is that it is a lot harder sometimes when you are attractive physically. And that doesn't mean necessarily by the world standards, but in the community that you surround yourself with, because it's easy to go seek satisfaction outside of that. And then a lot of times it's hard because people think that you have it better than them because you got something they didn't get, which in all practical purposes, you didn't really choose. you know, and that's challenging too. Like just like somebody who's born with a lot of money.
Yeah.
Everybody's like, well, they have it made. It's like,
Yeah.
well,
they shouldn't be suffering. Look at all the money they
look
have.
at all they have, or this guy has that, and it's like, oh, this person's extremely gifted athlete, so they shouldn't have any trouble either. And it's like everybody's got theirs, you know, everybody's got theirs, and you got to be able to acknowledge that in everybody. But sometimes when you're in a place like that where you are gifted in some way, then it's so much easier to seek that validation outside of yourself, whether it be financially, physically, athletically. Fill in the fucking blank. Whatever gift you got, a lot of people will go to find their validation in that gift somehow.
Well,
and that's like the dark side of the gift.
Totally.
You know?
I had I would say like I didn't grow up regarding myself as particularly good looking. I work on camera, and I've had a lot of camera oriented roles in my life, in my adult life, and so I'd be hesitant to be like, yeah, you know, because that sounds really obnoxious. But
it does sound obnoxious.
But I will say that it has at times caused that hole to, I think, be bigger and last longer as part of my the governing mechanisms of my life, because for so long survival and self-worth was determined by external, you know, validation and external factors. And a big part of like coming into my 30s and surrendering my attachment to those kinds of validations has been, you know, like recognizing how important it is to fill those holes up with something substantial and something that's really rooted to what I love. You know, I love to write. I didn't invest any time in that sort of career path when I was younger because it was so much easier to make money doing a promotional modeling gig or like doing a commercial, or, you know, I was able to go have fun and like do all these great things that were in instant gratification, but that wasn't an investment in myself. And then I ended up in a place where I could have had a more fulfilling life experience day to day and probably be a lot further along in the career that I want, because I was chasing that sort of artificial, superficial, you know, validation and just kind of the surface of everything.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate.
And you pick the low hanging fruit only, and you don't get especially
anywhere. When the low hanging fruit is like dangled in front of your face and
it
really told you that's all you're gonna get.
And
there's no meat for you.
Yeah, exactly. And we've created an environment where that's extremely glorified. Extremely glorified, and then you don't, and then you're not allowed. Oh, fuck, dude.
For me,
that was before social media for you, huh? It was It was the same thing, like athletically growing up. Like that was my, you know, you look at it, and it was very. If you've seen the movie Varsity Blues, like that's very similar to the way that I grew up, and to the point where I didn't have to apply myself to very many things. Like I went to football practice, and I did a good job, and I was 6'4" and 200 pounds in the seventh. I was 6'1". No, I was 6 foot flat and 200 pounds in the 7th grade. Like that, there was not going to be a time in high school where I had to be concerned with my English grades, and that was how it was. What that meant for me later down the road is that I had to actually learn how to learn and learn how to work and learn how to do things, because no one gave a shit. You get to a certain point, no one gives a shit.
The muscles and the height.
It's actually to your disadvantage. Like, oh, look, yeah, exactly. It's like, well, you're not going to the NFL, so you got to figure some other shit out, you know? And it is crazy that we'll constantly pick the low-hanging fruit or seek the easiest validation. And because you're going to meet, just like Stephen Pressfield talks about, God, I'm name dropping like a champ today. Just like Stephen Pressfield talks about, you'll hit inevitable resistance in a true journey. That's the hero's journey. You're going to reach a part where you have to go through the darkness. Sure. And if you're like, oh man, that darkness doesn't look too fucking awesome, I'm going to go over here and do this thing now.
Yeah, distraction.
Yeah, I'm going to do this. And you just end up like barely progressing on like 8 different things versus really, you know, gritting your teeth, trying to put a little smile on and just bear it. Just bear it, because you know what's on the other side is more rich and deep than what you don't even know what it's going to be like, but you don't know what you don't know, but it's going to be something amazing. It's going to be something full and rich versus instant shallow gratification. Yeah. And that's one thing too we don't look at enough. I'm going to do it again.
Do it.
Mark Manson.
Hope someone's making a list out there.
Some show notes.
Valuable.
No, Mark Manson talks about this in The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, is that we don't even know the beautiful things that are going to be given to us by persevering and giving something our all. There's certain things that you don't get until your kid turns 5 years old. These beautiful moments that you didn't even know were going to exist. There's certain things in a relationship that if you just keep dodging and distracting yourselves, that you don't get from being completely committed to somebody in a deep way for a decade or 30 years. There's these moments that you can't even comprehend because you don't have context on them at the point. And faith in that can really help when you get into the darkness.
Yeah. Or you could, or maybe even thinking of it as like curiosity for a taste that something you haven't tasted. I had a distinct recognition of that over the past month was that I just haven't, you hear, you're more afraid of success than you are afraid of failing. And I always felt like that's not true. I totally want to succeed, and and then I kind of meditated on that a little bit more about what I was really afraid of, why I can't seem to arrive. And I know we never arrive, but just like breaking through to sort of what you're talking about. And
breaking the tether kind of
tasting what you haven't tasted before. And I don't know that it's as much of a fear of success. I think that for some people it is. I think it can be a fear of of our own power. But I think for me, it's a fear of the unknown. Like I haven't
leaving the comfortability of where you're at.
I don't know what it's like to be a successful grown ass woman who's a published writer, like a business owner, because while I've entertained certain ideas, I know what it feels like to be the me that I know. And that's not scary. So it's not like I'm scared of how powerful I am as much as I'm scared of just the unknown.
Yeah.
And I think we all have different, facets of fear that are shining their lights in our eyes and keeping us where we're standing. But for me, recognizing that was like, whoa, if I just get rid of that sort of intimidation, I have no idea what I'm capable of. I might be a really incredible, powerful woman. And I'm sort of, lingering back here in this like childlike kind of limbo because I'm just afraid of something that I can't even imagine. And what if it's fucking amazing? Surely it's fucking amazing. And that makes me hungry. I'm like, I want to taste it. I want to see what it tastes like to be a more expressed and fully embodied version of myself, of the person that I am. It doesn't have to be a different person. It can just be a bigger expression of that person.
You're evolving too, like the forms of expression that maybe served you when you were 23, that linger around because they're comfortable, don't really serve you anymore. And then you can, the validation that you received is just kind of automatic, and it's easy. Sometimes it just takes. It takes faith, man. It takes faith to leave your hometown.
Faith and courage.
You're always 17 in your hometown.
Well, to speak back on when I moved to Vegas, even though it was sort of like a gloomy, energetic hell.
Yeah.
Love you, Vegas, but it was not the brightest point of my life. I stayed there for a lot longer than I thought I would, and I think subconsciously that's because in Austin, where I grew up here in Texas, and it was the most familiar place to me. And subconsciously, I just wasn't growing very fast because you're getting constant reflection of the way people have seen you for God knows how long, however many years. Even sometimes being around a person that's been around you for 1 year is a bit too much of a reflection of something that you might be ready to move past. But you're getting all of this social reinforcement of this old idea of yourself, and you can't see clearly anymore.
And being around, and this is one thing that I think is extremely powerful, is being around growth-minded individuals that are willing to accept you in your constant changing. I don't remember who said this, but it doesn't matter because I've given you 37 names to go search. Is that in the sitcom of other people's lives, you're a character, right? If just think about your friends are looking at their life as if it's a Friends episode, and you're Monica, right? They don't want you to go off. They don't want you to go off script. They need you. They have expectations around who you're supposed to be, and in those certain times, Monica's going to be super neurotic and freak out and like make a bunch of jam or something. I don't know. I saw a Friends episode the other day.
I was like, what?
Yeah, that was actually happened. That's in an episode.
She did that.
Yeah, she did that. But no, I'm saying like it is uncomfortable for other people if you go off script and change. And that's where the resistance comes from on there. And it's like, whoa, I have expectations of who you're supposed to be. You have a role in my life. In the TV show that I've created around my reality, you have a role in it. So don't go fucking changing it, because then I have to adjust my entire expectations. So you have to watch that with people that are around you that are your source of validation, because it doesn't serve them for you to change.
No.
Because they're going into the unknown of themselves. It's like, well, I don't know what's going to happen. Are we still going to be friends? Is this going to be a thing? Like, how, am I serving them? And then they have to reflect on themselves and say, well, am I serving this person in their new role, in their new life? Do I have a place in that? And that becomes extremely challenging. Aubrey almost just walked into a window, by the way, guys. The Aubrey Marcus, everybody. No, but and that's
and then we can also stalk ourselves and go like, oh, because your ego wants to survive, and if it knows itself as one thing, and if it's trying to stay in the familiar and not break through to the unfamiliar, then it's going to be subtly guiding you back into the environments that reinforce the identity that you're familiar with, that keeps you feeling safe.
Yep.
So that's something that, man, if I could do one now. I'll say I'm really happy with myself and I love myself, because I need to say that before I need to preface any New Year's resolution with that. If I could make one overall change, would just be like, paying better attention to when the ego's in the driver's seat and steering me back into environments that make itself feel comfortable, because I'm never going to get out of the fear zone that way. I'm going to be or like the comfort zone. It's kind of one and the same. And that's something that's tricky about like being with your tribe. Like Connor and I are part of a group here in Austin that we consider ourselves family, and we're able to support each other in consciousness and growth. And I think we do a great job of that. But you have tribes all throughout your life. I was just looking at my lifetime recently and like seeing it as all these lifetimes within a lifetime. You can kind of separate it by tribe.
I just had that same thought today. It's so funny you said
Family,
that.
your high school clique, and then you have like a relationship that defines an era and so forth. And all those things are really integral in shaping your identity. And that makes all the difference sometimes in what you're willing to do and how much you're willing to challenge yourself. So it's crucial to just like be willing to put yourself in an environment where the identity is wiped away, and you can look at yourself and say like, oh, what do I want to do right now? What's, if everyone's if everyone sees me as the party cat who doesn't want to go to sleep and is late to everything, I'm always going to see myself that way, because for all of my best intentions and all of my self-work, I'm not getting the mirror that says you're an empowered woman, doing great on your mission. And the more we can hunt that in our lives and say like, what's this person reflecting to me? It's your perception. So you have responsibility there, but there's also like a responsibility to yourself, like what you said earlier, what you're going to allow and what you're going to take ownership of in how you choose to spend your time.
Yeah. And that's some of the best verbiage I found around that, is just being able to express in a very loving way when that expectation is pushed on you, be like, hey, I'm just not available for that right now. Like, I'm not available for that in my journey right now. That's not where I need to be. And it's crazy. And then you think about, well, then you say, okay, well, I need that in myself. I need people around me that can receive that. So I need to be able to do that for other people. And I need to have that conversation. We actually had a conversation over dinner last night where that's one thing that really crossed my mind was, well, can we be available to understand that when people are changing and it's uncomfortable for us, that's not our story. To not get super enrolled in someone else's story, because I may need to change and evolve as I am, and it doesn't necessarily help me for you to expect me to be in the way that you expect me to be. And that may be challenging for the people that are in your family, in your tribe, in your chosen tribe. But that's okay, and that is a humongous step. So can you bring that to your people? Because what will happen is when you start to change and evolve, you're not going to get the same validation because people don't understand it. Versus, and I'll say this personally to you, when I started seeing you putting more effort into the work you were doing, and this is so superficial, but it's something we can do. I'm all about superficiality today as well. Is like blew up your fucking Instagram DMs when you were writing and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I think I sent you like 75 hearts and like 25 fires.
They're always welcome. Hearts in the DMs.
But it was something that's like, okay, was it an ass photo or like, was it sexy? No, but it was really fucking great. And it was cool that I saw you consciously putting energy into something that I believe that from what you've told me and what I've experienced from you, really fuels you.
Yeah.
And I knew that, and I've seen this in other people that are very close to me, that sometimes the things that they love don't get validated externally as much as they would like.
Sure.
And I try to validate those things that people I know more so than the other things. Mm-hmm. And because that's what I would like for myself.
Yeah.
You know, I think I had just keep rolling on the superficial train, like someone very close to me acknowledging how attracted they were to me physically. And which is great, and that's awesome. God, I might get emotional. But I got upset about it because I was like, that's just I didn't choose my fucking bone structure. This shit just happened. I didn't choose any of this shit. But there are things in my life that I put a fuck ton of effort into, like developing compassion, and I didn't even know what the fuck empathy meant 7 years ago. And I put effort into doing that and bringing myself to people. And I would rather be acknowledged for that than this fucking meaningless shit that gets me Instagram likes that will not last, that has a fucking shelf life. Can you please, if you're going to be important in my life, acknowledge those things? Because otherwise I don't give a fuck. I just don't. Like, I can throw on glasses and a beanie and look like a fucking model. Awesome. That's not because I did anything. That's just I just won the fucking genetic lottery. And that's silly to say that, because a lot of people would be like, well, bro. And I'm like, I get it. Okay, if you want to fucking rip on me for saying that, feel free. You know, you know where to find me. But at the same time, it's so valuable to give someone enough of yourself that they can share enough of themselves that you can see what they actually invest into with their conscious effort, and bring light to that for them, because that's powerful. That's something that they can take with them. That's a gift to them. And it doesn't take that much fucking effort. It just doesn't.
Just takes a little bit of awareness.
Yeah, just a little bit. Just a little bit of
like what lights this person up? What can I feed in this person? And for ourselves, you know, recognizing the people that do celebrate that. Like, for example, you know, I've had a really, you know, the past 40 days I did have another drink of alcohol, but and I had a sense of defeat, but I had a lot of big strides in sharing, and like sharing some of my creative work, sharing some of my writing and social outlets, which I felt, you know, really nervous about. And I had a really great response, you know, so much support from people writing into me and saying, you know, today, girl, you're conscious as fuck. You know, that's way more empowering than girl, you're sexy as fuck.
Yeah.
I gloss right over that, you know,
yeah, it's like,
and
cool.
It probably seems like what I want because I got breast implants 10 years ago, or because I, you know, have a bikini modeling shot floating around the internet or whatever. But you know, that was my 25-year-old self. And now I can use that as sort of a compass and be like, oh, this person is going to be a person that lifts me up and celebrates the things about me that I want to strengthen. And that's how I can build my tribe from here on out. I can start collecting and cultivating these connections with people that are going to mirror the me that I am today, and help me move on from that former lifetime that is governing my current one. And
when you're in that kind of community, then that is what's sexy. You know?
How to be sexy in 2018.
Woke is the new sexy.
Oh, yes. Oh, my yes.
That's got to go on a meme.
Meme city.
Oh, Caitlyn. Well, damn, we were rolling this thing for an hour.
Dang.
Where can everybody find you at?
Well, my most active social media outlet would be Instagram, CaitlynEssie. It's Caitlyn Essie, because my middle initial is S. Probably could come up with something a little bit more marketable than that, but that's what it is. I work for the... Watch
that self-critic, dude. Your Instagram handle's fine. It's going to be okay. Man, I'm not good enough.
and we're back to square one. And the spiral continues. On Twitter, I'm Caitlyn Howe, CaitlynHowe. That's my name. And I'm on World Poker Tour as part of the Royal Flush crew. And
Flush
I
Squad, what's
hold
up?
it down on labs in Austin, Texas, in between trips. I'll be out in Berlin next week for the European Championships if anybody's in Berlin. And I would love to connect with as many people out there that want to celebrate our conscious sides and the parts of us that we want to strengthen this year. So
That's awesome, man.
it's
Well,
for your time.
I'm really grateful for you and having you in my life, and it's been a fun year, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Caitlyn.
Thank you.
Talk soon. Bye.
Bye.
Well, guys, I absolutely loved recording that episode with Caitlyn. She is one of my favorite people in the world. I know I say that about a lot of people, but I've got a lot of people that I love, and she is firmly in that group. If you love this show, please head over to iTunes, give it a 5-star review, go find Caitlyn on social media and give her so much love. And if you want to become a part of the conversation, you can go to Facebook and search Pleasure Monkey Life, request access to the group. I'll let you in, come in, introduce yourself, and surround yourself with incredible people that love transparency, love sharing, love engaging in your experience. And we also have a few friends over at some other organizations doing some awesome work that is in total alignment with what we do. Our friends over at Hate Brand Goods are making some of the dopest gym and lifestyle apparel in the game. You can find them at thehate.com. That's THEHVIII.com. Use code word monkey for 15% off all your goodies. Also, if you are looking to improve the way you interact with people, improve the way you talk to yourself, and really bring out the parts of yourself that you value the most, I cannot recommend any program more highly than the Procabulary course. It is called Core Language Upgrade, and it addresses the way that you engage with yourself and other people. You can go to procabulary.org. That's procabulary.org. Check it out. Use code word monkey, and you're going to get $99 off of the course, bringing it down to $199, and you won't regret it. I honestly think if you take the principles learned in that course and apply it to your job, you will make way more money than that in the year just by being able to bring the most dope version of yourself to every encounter that you stumble upon. Fuck it. You don't stumble upon it. You create it for yourself. Bring the best version of yourself. Motherfuckers. Procabulary.org. Our buddy Mark England has also been on the show if you want to go check that out as well. And if you were looking for some high quality CBD to maybe reduce that anxiety, decrease inflammation, and all the other good neurological and physical benefits of really high quality CBD, go see our friends over at hemplucid.com, and you'll be using code word monkey for 15% off all your goodness. Thank you so much for tuning in today, guys. I love you all with all of my heart and all of my soul. Go out and just crush 2018 or whatever year this is if you're listening to it in the future. Whatever year you're in, fucking kill it. We're here for you. We love you. Peace out. We'll see you next time. Bye.